Diamonstein-Spielvogel, who regrettably is unable to join us today due to a death in her family, I bring a message of congratulations and admiration for the life and work of I.M. Pei. I am Deborah Bershad, representing the Historic Landmarks Preservation Center, a group of dedicated individuals committed to informing the public about the past, present, and future of our city. Our warmest thanks to the Pei siblings, Dee Dee, Sandy, and Leanne, for joining us to commemorate their father, celebrated architect Io Ming Pei, on what would have been his 104th birthday. Coincidentally, today is the 199th birthday of another extraordinary designer whose visionary work also changed our cities and how we live, Frederick Law Olmsted. Thanks also to Simeon Bankoff for his able assistance. I.M. Pei was born in Guangzhou, southern China in 1917 and raised in Hong Kong and Shanghai. He came to the US to study architecture. A graduate of MIT, he received a master's in architecture from Harvard, where he was influenced by Walter Gropius and Marcel Breuer. In 1948, developer William Zeckendorf, the senior, recruited Pei to lead his new in-house architectural design team. He worked for Zeckendorf for 7 years until he formed I.M. Pei and Associates, a widely admired and versatile architect whose designs evolved from his analysis of time, place, and purpose. One of Pei's early notable projects was the 1961 Mesa National Center for Atmospheric Research. His selection in 1964 to design the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library was followed by significant commissions. The East Building of the National Gallery, dedicated in 1978 with President Carter's eloquent tribute, quote, "As the Capitol symbolizes our belief in political democracy and civil freedom, the National Gallery symbolizes our belief in the freedom and genius of the human mind, which is manifested in art. The building we dedicate today is a reaffirmation that human values, the expression of courage and love, in triumph over despair, will always endure." The East Building was hailed as the most important building of its era. Other notable buildings include the Bank of China Tower, the once controversial and now iconic Pyramid and Entry Hall of the Grand Louvre, Paris, and the Museum of Islamic Art in Qatar. Always a diplomat, open to new ideas and other cultures, and a consummate gentleman, his 100th birthday in 2017 was celebrated with a black tie dinner at the Glittering Rainbow Room atop Rockefeller Center. He was toasted by many of the world's leading architects, including some who began their careers with him. They joined a circle of friends that included significant members of the Chinese community in the United States, who considered him one of their most prominent figures. As a biographer of Pei once noted, he received almost every award and honor for architecture during the course of his career. They included the AIA Gold Medal, 1979, the Pritzker Prize in Architecture, 1983, the US Presidential Medal of Freedom, 1992, and the Lifetime Achievement Award from Cooper Hewitt, National Design Museum. And now for our speakers. Just see who's okay. Businessman and financier Oscar Tang, born in Shanghai, is a graduate of Andover, Yale University, and Harvard Business School. We've changed the order of the program slightly, Mr. Tang, because of we're still waiting for some of our other speakers. After a long and successful career in the world of finance, he spends much of his time currently as an informed philanthropist. A fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, he has served on the board of NISCA and the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities. Oh, we have our other speakers. I will finish the introduction. He is currently a board member of the Metropolitan Museum of Art and co-chair of board of the New York Philharmonic.
Would you like me to go ahead? Or?
Would you like to go ahead, and then we'll go back to our original, if the other members are joining?
No, I'm sorry. I was just told that we was at Sutton Place, so I'm in a taxi now at the last minute trying to get there. The traffic is terrible.
We were never at Sutton Place. I'm so sorry for any confusion, but that's okay. Perhaps we could, Mr. Tang, you could start your talk, and then we could go to the next.
Well,
I'm happy to do so.
Okay.
Hi, Oscar. How are you?
I'm good,
Hi.
thanks.
And then I'll introduce. Or would you like? We can go to the original program now, if you're able to speak, Mr.
I'm in the car right now.
So are you able to speak, or would you prefer to wait?
Well, I'm able to speak, actually, I guess, if it's okay with you.
Let me
You don't mind
introduce
me
you
having
then.
my mask on?
Why don't we wait and let Mr. Tang speak, and then we'll come back to you. That's okay.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Mr. Tang?
Thank you very much. So my talk will be a little different than about architecture, but I hope it'll be relevant.
I'm sure it will.
This dedication takes place at a time when there is a surge of anti-Asian American hatred and violence throughout the country. This is the latest manifestation of the view that Asian Americans are perpetual foreigners, that somehow we don't belong. In anticipation of the event, I spoke to Henry Tang, a friend of IAM's, and with IAM, a founder of the Committee of 100. We agreed that almost certainly IAM would not be a target of such attacks. But in Henry's word, and I quote, IAM would feel their pain and would certainly want to do something about it, unquote. So today, I want to talk to you about a side of IAM which is perhaps a bit less known. And that is IAM's important place in the story of the Chinese diaspora in America. The first Chinese to come to America in any numbers were laborers attracted by the discovery of gold in California in the 1850s and recruited to build the transcontinental railroads. Nearly all of these peasants, workers, were recruited from the very poor province, two very poor counties in the southern province of Guangdong. Their willingness to work under terrible conditions were viewed by white workers with great resentment and cast them as bitter competitors and perpetual foreigners. In the aftermath of the completion of the transcontinental railroads in the 1870s, and in the midst of the following economic depression, this hostility grew, culminating in the 1872 passage of the Chinese Exclusion Act, which for all intents and purposes terminated Chinese immigration for nearly 75 years until 1965. It further entrenched the idea that we don't belong. But there's another very different aspect of the Chinese American story, and that is centered on Chinese students coming to study in the US. This trend started in 1872 when the Chinese imperial government created a Chinese education mission that sent 120 young Chinese boys to study in New England so that they could receive a Western education to prepare them to return to help China modernize. These students were followed, especially in the early 20th century, by a steady flow of students who came to study and then returned to China. As part of this pattern, I.M. came as a student in 1935, and he too might have returned to China after his studies, except for the Japanese War and occupation from 1937 to 1945, soon followed by the communist takeover in 1949. Because of these circumstances, I.M. became among the first of the flow of Chinese students who remained in America and became Americans. I.M. was not entirely free of the, quote, not belonging stigma burdening many Asian Americans. For example, before leaving the faculty at Harvard to join William Zeckendorf and Webb and Knapp in 1948, he apparently considered starting his own firm, but was discouraged by the difficulty of obtaining all the regulatory approvals for a Chinese American. Nevertheless, by the mid-1970s, I.M. had become the iconic American architect, sought after not only in this country, but around the world. Honors and awards from the most distinguished organizations were bestowed upon him. Yet in 1978, he chose to accept an award as Man of the Year from the Chinese American Planning Council, at the time a humble social service organization that operated daycare centers for poor garment workers in Chinatown so that infants would not be left untended at home while their parents worked in the sweatshops. I.M., by then the recognized first citizen of Chinese Americans, felt an obligation to help his less fortunate fellow Chinese Americans, even though they had arrived through an entirely different process than his own experience. In subsequent years, I.M. remained close to the Chinese American Planning Council, acted as a role model, and helped the CPC advance its mission of serving the poor Chinese American community in numerous ways. In 1985, at a dinner, Henry Kissinger asked I.M., why was it that there was no Chinese American leadership organization that could speak for the growing Chinese American community as a whole, and recommended that he, I.M., should initiate such a group. Nothing was to come of this until 1989. In June of that year, the student demonstrators in Tiananmen Square were brutally suppressed with large but undetermined number of casualties. I.M. reacted by writing an anguished op-ed in the New York Times in protest and led a group of 6 to found the Committee of 100, a Chinese American leadership organization with a dual mission. With the advice of Dr. Kissinger and Richard Holbrooke, it is not surprising that one of Committee's 100's missions is the promotion of a constructive relationship between the US and China. But the other mission that those of us Chinese Americans who have enjoyed success in America should work for the full participation and success of all Chinese Americans in American society came from within the hearts of the founders, especially from within IM. Like everyone, I am a great admirer of IM's work and accomplishments. But beyond that, it is his empathy for his fellow Chinese Americans in his sense of obligation to use his strength to help those less established to also arrive at a state of belonging in our wonderful country, which speaks to the humanity of IM Bay. Thank you.
Thank you for that very moving and important tribute. And now for our next speaker, Jianzheng Pei, called Didi, spent the first 20 years of his career working with his father and contributing to many of IMK and partners' celebrated projects. A cum laude graduate in physics and a master's in architecture from Harvard, he is co-chair of the board of the China Institute in America. In 2007,
I think you can mute me. You're gonna get anything. How do you mute? Turn the volume off. Turn the audio off.
in 2007, Didi was recognized with the UCLA Medal, the highest honor bestowed by the university for design excellence for the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medal.
Turn off your volume.
No, I'm on mute.
For the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. It was the first time in its history that the highest award of the university was given first to a father and later to his son for two different projects. Didi Pei. Thank you for joining us.
Now it's time for you to speak. Yeah.
Is this, are you looking for me now?
Turn off your volume.
How do I do that?
Yes,
Turn the volume down?
I don't know how to, okay. Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry for the little hiccup in the arrangement here, but first of all, this is for Barbara Lee, by the way. First of all, I want to congratulate you on spearheading this effort that recognizes the enduring value of our cities and New York in particular by highlighting the accomplished people that were attracted to live here. Developed societies now have in excess of 75% of their population in the cities. The economic vitality of the cities, of our cities, will continue to drive the creative and cultural life we enjoy, in which has been historically the true witness to our time. Before I start, on behalf of the Pei family, I want to take this opportunity to express our most sincere condolences to Barbara Lee Diamondstein for the loss of her husband, Carl, her beloved husband and longtime co-conspirator in arms. What a great man he was. We will miss him. So I thought I was going to be the first in this imposing line of speakers for this dedication ceremony. At first, I thought it would be an intimidating challenge. But upon reflection, I decided that there were some definite advantages, not the least of which was that I wouldn't have to worry about repeating what other people had already said better than I could. But in fact, there are so many incredible things that can be said about IM Pei that there's little risk of repetition. We specifically recognize on this plaque some, but certainly not all, of the important buildings my father left behind that contribute to the physical and cultural vitality of our beloved city. By themselves, they would justify this beautiful tribute that we see here today. These buildings that we, these are buildings that we can continue to visit and enjoy today because they are right here. But he also contributed to New York State with many buildings, including important museums in projects in Syracuse and Ithaca. Nationwide, he left his mark from coast to coast. Most architects' body of work is dominated by private houses or commercial developments. While my father certainly had these in his portfolio, his work is dominated by civic buildings. Civic buildings are the most sought after commissions by architects and the most difficult to get. These are buildings that most touch everyone because they are the buildings that we see and the buildings that we use. They are buildings that belong to us. These are the buildings that are generally located in the best sites. They carry symbolic meaning and act as catalysts to the surrounding development. In Boulder, Colorado, he built the National Center for Atmospheric Research in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. In Dallas, he built the Meyerson Symphony and the City Hall. In Boston, the city where I was born, he built the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library. And of course, we cannot forget the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., which was for many years voted the most important work of modern architecture in America by members of the American Institute of Architects. Towards the end of his career, his attention focused overseas. The Bank of China headquarters building in Hong Kong and Frequent Hills Hotel in Beijing were commercial projects, but he treated them like civic buildings. The civic projects continued to come, however, with the Museum of Islamic Art in Doha, the Contemporary Art Museum in Luxembourg, the German History Museum in Berlin, the Miho Museum in Japan, and of course, the Louvre Museum in Paris. For this last project, he was awarded 3 successive promotions of the Légion d'honneur, France's highest honor. I honestly cannot think of any architect who was able to build so many civic buildings. He was a model citizen of his adopted city of New York, but also of the state of New York, the United States, and the world. In this sense, he was truly unique.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm here with Sandy and Carrie and Land and Anna, so I guess we can keep on going
That's
with
wonderful.
them when their turns come.
Who is that? Who is that?
Okay. Thank you, Dee Dee. With his, Sandy will be the next speaker.
Hi.
Sandy, I just want to introduce you. With his brother Dee Dee, Lee Jung Pei, or Sandy, co-founded Pei Architects, initially working with his father on some of his award-winning projects. As a principal of this firm for nearly 4 decades, he has been involved in more than 50 projects worldwide. A magna cum laude graduate and an MA in architecture from Harvard. He serves on Christie's advisory board and is vice president of MoMA's legendary International Council. Sandy Pei. Hello?
Oh, hello.
Hi, can you see me now?
We can see you perfectly.
Okay, Deborah, I'm glad that we managed to connect.
Here we go.
The miracle of technology. Thank you.
Yeah, a miracle of my daughter here.
Your ingenuity.
I really have only a few things to say because I'm happily, Dee Dee has covered so much of what I would have wanted to say. But one of the things that of course, today we are honoring my father and his occupancy of this house for almost half of his life. I thought I would take just a brief moment to talk a little bit about his partner, his wife, who was very involved in this house. And you might say she managed it. My mother was actually the one who found this property back in the early 70s. And they moved into here in the early 70s, around 1972. I happened to be at the time in Europe.
Later.
Is it later?
Later.
73? Well, I came back for anyhow, I'm sure that, well, anyhow, we're arguing right now in front of you about the date of it, but I remember I came back from Europe from Europe in 73. I sort of remember coming here. Regardless, they spend almost half of their lives here in this house, and they entertained a great deal. My mother was known for her wonderful cooking, but also because of her experience and her love of gardening, because she had a degree from Harvard in landscape architecture. This house always had this wonderful scent of either gardenia or freesia wafting through the house. And so you can imagine well, you cannot because you're not here, but the house overlooks a beautiful, almost 1 acre garden facing to the east. And every morning they enjoyed the light coming in from that day. Dee Dee has spoken about my father's career. And in those 50 years that he lived here, some of his most important projects that Dee Dee has already mentioned were conceived. He used to work in this house night and day. He oftentimes just stayed here during the day to work on his various assignments. And this really became a place that nurtured his creativity. My mother was the one who enabled all of these wonderful things to happen because she really took care of his property and she took care of him. So I think that when we think about this house, we really need to think about the two of them together as a pair. Something I really want to emphasize, because as we pay tribute to my father and to this house, we also need to recognize this very, very important partnership that they had. So that's really what I wanted to say. And I think
Bravo.
I would like to pass that on to Leanne. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Leanne is going to join us now. Leanne Pei, until recently, was Director of Research Administration Cardiology at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai Hospital. She received her bachelor's degree at Brown and her law degree from Columbia University. Leanne? I think you're muted.
Hello?
Hello, that's good.
Okay.
But no, it won't prop up that way.
Oh.
Does it? Hi, can you see me?
If you could turn it the other way, you're on your side right now. If you could just turn the camera the other way, that would be great. Just like that. Yeah. And just face it. That's perfect.
Oh, no, her video's on.
My video's on.
Can we hear you?
We
Can you hear us?
We can hear
Oh.
you now.
Can you
Okay,
hear?
great.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
The famous line. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So again, apologies that we seem a little disorganized over here, but we're glad that we can join you. I think Dee Dee was so comprehensive on speaking about Dad, and I have nothing to add whatsoever, given that I'm not an architect. I have nothing to add on that front. I guess what I would say though is that I'm the one child that grew up here at the house. And I think today is a lot about the house. And I think Sandy's comments about our mom are very well taken. I think she absolutely made this house a home. And I can tell you that, oftentimes I think a lot of people think about Dad from the professional context, and it seems, very it's like a very rarefied kind of experience and career that he had, which is true. But one of the things I think is so great about this house is that this house was truly, truly lived in every possible way. It was a busy household. Mom had people coming and going, doing, projects in here. She was in the kitchen constantly cooking. I was going to and from school. I lived here even when I was in law school. So I had a bit of a commute, but it was always really nice to come home and know that I was going to have a great meal and comfortable surroundings to live in. But truly this house was, when I say lived in, I mean to the fullest. Every possible daily experience that families have happened here. There were all the happy times, sad times as well. Incredible visitors that came here. When I was a teenager growing up, I had friends coming over here, and inevitably we would be working on some project and we'd be making too much noise, and Dad would tell us to pipe down. It was a great concession for him finally when I was the editor of our yearbook, and I was on the phone constantly and he couldn't take it anymore. So as a concession, he actually let me have a second line to the house, because this was in the days way before cell phones. So I got my own phone number and my own phone. And that was probably the most exciting thing that a 17-year-old could possibly have. No, it wasn't a princess phone, but I was on the phone with my co-editors all the time and I could leave him in peace. But I would also say that in terms of just daily life, the things that Dad and Mom had to put up with was me blaring my music all hours of the day or night. So they were very patient, but it's a house that we have, obviously all of us have great memories of because our parents were here. But I also know this house intimately because I lived here for so many years growing up. And I think it really, if you walk into the house, it feels like our parents. And so I'm hoping that at least some of you had an opportunity to come here at one point when they were here to experience that as well. But we love this house, and Barbara Lee, thank you so much for making this possible for us to honor Dad and Mom, but also to really memorialize this very, very special location in the middle of New York City. It's a hidden treasure, but one that we're very proud that we now have this opportunity to, remember that Mom and Dad lived here for so many happy, happy years. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Leanne, for your very touching memories. And now Anna Pay, one of
I'm going to stand up so she can sit here.
grandchildren, is the founder of l'Archiviste, which works with clients to protect their crucial documents, and founder of Today au Musée, a program that teaches architecture, art history, and design to children. She is a graduate of Barnard College. Anna Pay.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Barbara Lee, for that introduction. I am so excited to be here today, and I feel a little silly having prepared something when my last two speakers were a little more colloquial. So I almost want to just speak from the heart, but my little speech that I prepared is speaking from the heart as well. So we will go with it. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. As we celebrate what would have been my grandfather's 104th birthday. It's incredible to think of how expansively my grandfather lived his 102 years. When I mention his loss to others, I'm often met with condolences, but immediately I interject, saying not to be sorry because he truly lived every inch of his life to the fullest, both metaphorically and physically when it came to his stomach. Because my dad mentioned my grandmother was a great cook, which is true. And so he was always full. While my Gungun preferred to be seen as a man of the world, at his core existed his two true identities, being Chinese and being a New Yorker. He and my grandmother saw this city with an awe so bright that they chose to ground their family in New York. Over the many places they resided in, this home stands as an emblem of their dedication to art, to family, and to America. The contributions he made to this world are too many to list, but one thing that stands beyond others is his passion for this country and the potential for greatness he saw within it. The marking of his and my grandmother's home as a historical landmark, and thus the guarantee of its preservation, embodies the strength of his American New Yorker identity. I know how proud, appreciative, and humbled they would be to know that the home they saw, the growth of my grandfather's career, the growth of our family will now be eternally theirs, eternally pay. Like a parent and child, an architect and his buildings present a unique bond that makes the quotidian raising of structures a relentless anxiety of one day having one of their offspring essentially destroyed. After that architect has passed, this fear then extends to his family, as now we are the guardians of the concrete and glass that continue to live without him. We protect this building not only on behalf of the architect, my Gongong, but for ourselves, as these structures are the closest thing we have to once more feeling the warmth of his touch and the glimmer in his eye. And so, on my grandparents' behalf, I wholeheartedly thank you, Barbara Lee, and the Historic Landmarks Preservation Committee for seeing the beauty in this home as much as my grandfather did in the world. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Anna Pei. And now, admired educator and structural engineer Guy Nordenson is professor of architecture and structural engineering at Princeton. A graduate of MIT and the University of California at Berkeley, he began his career as a draftsman in the joint Long Island City studio of R. Buckminster Fuller and Isamu Noguchi in 1976. By 1997, he began his independent practice. Notable among Nordenson's more than 200 projects are the Jubilee Church in Rome, the Santa Fe Opera House, the Menil Drawing Institute in Texas, and the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Guy Nordenson.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm pleased to be able to join you all today, family and friends of I.M. Pei, to honor I.M.'s memory with this plaque marking his home for so many years. This is a place made remarkable to me by the elegance of the surroundings, the presence of nature in the sound and smell of the river, and the remarkable bridge of Gustav Lindenthal's that looms over this row of jewel-like townhouses. This place in so many ways remembers I.M.'s grace and depth of feeling and artistry. I had only a few precious times to be with I.M. in person. Once, when I was only 23, I had the luck of spending a New Year's Day afternoon with him and Isamu Noguchi, listening to them reminiscing. Isamu had wanted me to meet I.M. and drove me over in his yellow VW station wagon on that day. Of course, I.M. was at the office working, but he took the time, and I will never forget their warm, but also slightly competitive banter. Years later, as I worked with his partners, Jim Fried and Harry Cobb, we would cross paths, but we did not work together. I think my last time was when I had the pleasure of walking him through the tall building exhibition at MoMA that I co-curated in 2004. Of course, his comments on the buildings were measured and polite, but I did what I could to read between the lines and learn. We had the time to also visit the adjacent Lee Montague exhibition, and there his pleasure and enthusiasm flowed freely. On this occasion with this group, I should also represent the strong collaborations I.M. had with some of the great engineers of our time. It was under this bridge in the garden out back that I am and the late Les Robertson conceived of the crystalline structure of the beautiful Bank of China in Hong Kong. Theirs was one of the key pairings of that era, joined by a strong mutual respect and affection, as well as the virtues of genius. I am also worked with Peter Rice on the Louvre, both the pyramids verted and inverted, and the canopy of glass and ephemeral structure over the Richelieu wing. In the best collaborations, you can find a synergy that raises both sides to the top of their games, and I see these are among each of their greatest works for that reason. In the end, for me, was that unique and generous artist who is also a leader able to marshal the best out of his colleagues and clients and friends to make lasting works of great architecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for pointing out the importance of collaboration in I.M. Pei's work. Since 2011, Michael Kimmelman has been the architecture critic of the New York Times, previously the New York Times chief art critic and the creator of the Abroad column, which covered significant global issues. He has twice been a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. A best-selling author and regular contributor to the New York Review of Books, his work focuses on urban affairs, public space, housing for the poor, infrastructure, social equality and the environment, and design. A very warm welcome to Michael Kimmelman.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
Great. So let me join in sending my condolences to Barbara Lee, and also wishing I.M. Pei a happy 104th birthday. I'm really honored to join and love hearing from his children and granddaughter about him and his life and the life of with his wife and your mom. So thank you for having me here. Anytime, of course, is a good time to honor his memory for all he did to shape our architectural imagination, our cities, our modern culture, global civilization. I think at this latest inflection point in American history, it is particularly great to enshrine with the dedication of this medallion the legacy of a towering Chinese American, an iconic, proud fellow New Yorker, an immigrant who gracefully conquered the city and remade it, and whose most enduring buildings were expressions of a shared humanity and sense of belonging and of the power of design to bind us. Around the time I.M. Pei acquired 11 Sutton Place, I think I was in high school, and my girlfriend lived a few doors south. So I like to imagine that I may have passed him after some illicit visit on my frigid walk home to the subway, or on some warm Saturday evening when I picked my girlfriend up and dragged her to a piano recital at the 92nd Street Y. I did that a couple of times. She ultimately forgave me. She's now my literary aide. At events like these, there is an unspoken rule: don't talk about yourself. So please forgive me for breaking the rule. But I suspect that I am, like millions of other people in whose lives Pei's work has been a leitmotif. And preparing to say something today, I not only remembered my dalliance on Sutton Place, but realized just how many Pei and partner buildings have been touchstones in my own life. The East Building felt like home when I was an art critic for the Times. I've always loved the crystalline poetry of those shifting, lacy shadows in the atrium, cast by that miraculous sawtooth glass and steel skylight. The tiers and towers and nooks and crannies, and all those razor sharp edges of those triangulated shapes. The clarity and confidence of Pei's geometry inserted a balletic brand of high modernism into the heavy, monolithic monotony of the mall. That was not just an architectural breath of fresh air, but a symbolic reboot for America. It is still an exalting totem-like monument that to me always feels light and upbeat, a container that serves kindred art shows and acts as a great public space. I found it a place to hang out with friends in DC. People have loved or hated its modernist rigor. I walk in from the street to that entrance and consider it not cold, but uplifting and cosmopolitan. So much of Pei's best work, I realize, involves spaces and places that are both heroic and inviting, that use modernism's universal language of geometry to bridge epochs and cultures. The pyramid at the Louvre, the museum in Doha with its Islamic flourishes and Spanish Corinthian columns, its intricate domed atrium and sublimely beautiful and intimate galleries. Some years ago, I visited Des Moines and finally made the pilgrimage to the annex to Saarinen's museum. The brief for the annex mandated these huge rooms for huge modern sculptures at the same time that the project needed somehow not to overshadow Saarinen's low-rise building. Pei nestled the annex on a slope to make it seem less imposing, and a reflecting pool helps dematerialize the concrete mass. It was a quiet, early weekday morning when I visited, and the annex was nearly empty. The interior just bowled me over, the play of solids and voids, the sunlight through large windows, the elegance of the bush-hammered concrete, which nodded to Saarinen's cut-stone facade, and the way sculptured spaces sheltered and complemented the large-scale art, but felt human-scaled, almost domestic. I grew up in the village, so I have to mention Silver Towers by Pei and Partners, where I often went to visit friends and liked to look out from their windows over the neighborhood. Older villagers, like my parents and aunt and uncle and their friends, had watched the changes that the towers in Washington Square Village brought to those blocks below the park with trepidation. I took those changes for granted, and I loved the towers with their deep set windows and pinwheel plan that appeared slightly different as we moved around the buildings, changing with the light of day. To me, the architecture represented the spirit of the village, a feeling of radicality, but also in the midst of all the old streets and row houses, a mashup of architectural styles which went along with the magnanimity and generosity that were also part of the neighborhood's self-image. Magnanimity, generosity, a cultural bridge, architectural fashions ebb and flow, high modernism has suffered more than its share of obituaries. I'm just thankful now to be able to add my 2 cents on this occasion, because I.M. Pei's work speaks to values that don't go away. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that beautiful description of Pei's buildings and its impact upon you, his architecture's impact upon you. It's really memorable. Thank you. And now we would like to read the text of the cultural medallion. Simeon, could you put that up, please? There we go. It's our virtual unveiling. And if the family would like to read it, perhaps Anna could read the text, or Leanne.
I can read it.
Hi. Oh,
Thank you
just
so
kidding.
much.
You go.
Hi, can you hear me?
That'd be wonderful. Thank
Oh,
you.
wait. Am I reading it or is Anna reading it?
You could,
Okay. Let me see if I can see this on here. I'm trying to read on my screen. Yeoming Pei, April 26th to 1917 to May 16th, 2019, 11 Sutton Place, Manhattan. Yeoming Pei, born in Guangzhou, China, to Lian Zhongzhuang and Chu Yipei, a key figure in the creation of China's modern banking system, came to the US to attend MIT, where he received his Bachelor's of Architecture in 1940 and met Wellesley student Eileen Liu. They married in 1942. He received a master's in architecture in 1946 from Harvard. 2 years later, developer William Zeckendorf Sr. invited him to lead his new in-house architectural design team. Early projects included Kips Bay Plaza in New York City, 1957 to 62. By 1960, I.M. Pei and Associates was an independent firm. His selection to design the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library was followed by other prestigious commissions, including government and office buildings, hotels, museums, and a concert hall. His works include the National Gallery, East Building, Washington, D.C., 1968 to 78, Bank of China Tower, Hong Kong, 1982 to 89, the Grand Louvre, Paris, 1983 to 93, and the Museum of Islamic Art, Doha, Qatar, 2003 to 2008. Pei, the consummate architect diplomat, received the 1979 AIA Gold Medal, the 1983 Pritzker Prize in Architecture, and the 1992 U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom. The family lived here for almost 50 years until his death in 2019.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Leanne. And thanks to each of you who participated in this program and to all of you who made it possible. And thank you to our audience for joining us today to celebrate the life and work of I.M. Pei. Thank you.
I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to say thank you so much. And also, I'm outside the building in case anyone would like to see it. It's right here.
Thank you for unveiling it.
Thank you.
Ripped
Thanks
it
a lot.
down.
Bye-bye.
Woo! Thanks so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you.